My name is Lucy. I am 25 and I was diagnosed when I was 23. I found it quite difficult that they asked quite a lot of personal questions that I found very stressful, even including about the stuff, do you feel suicidal, stuff like that, which I don't. But because I have social anxiety, when people say stuff, you feel like maybe you should feel that way because someone is suggesting it to you, because I'm very sensitive and easily influenced and stuff. So I don't really like depressing things like that. I don't want to have any difficulties that impede me, but it's also good for me to know that I do have characteristics of autism like social anxiety and difficulties with eye contact that help me explain why I have had more difficult things than others in school and university and so on. It's like my mum said to the woman who was diagnosing me, Lucy keeps wondering what it is that she's done wrong. Because I know that for example, I'm a quite likable person and I've had friends, but things have been more difficult for me, I think, than other people. Things that help me understand autism. Well, I actually did a presentation about autism at Middlesex University, which was good, and we put together some slides. I also know of some famous people that have autism, like Chris Packham, and who was someone I sort of would look up to. I know that he had a difficult time when he was younger, but now he's very clever and intelligent and runs wildlife documentaries. Also, I worked with a couple of children who had autism, and I noticed they could be a bit more challenging, but obviously still very sweet and would sit on my lap and so on. I have this good friend who also has autism and is exactly my age like me, and we meet up quite often. And she gives me some advice. I was asking her about someone I went out with who also has autism, and she was explaining some things to me like, oh yeah, that's because sometimes people with autism, they find it difficult to imagine themselves in someone else's position a bit more, so they can be a bit more insensitive. So sometimes she would explain things like to me, oh, that's why, or stuff like that. Because obviously I didn't really know that much about autism at first, but she was diagnosed when she was 3. I think I do definitely have more to learn, but I also definitely think that there is a complete range on the spectrum. So I would give someone who has just been diagnosed, I would give them access or links to groups like I had been to. I also contacted friends that I used to know that appeared on a documentary. You know her, Sam, who I used to go to Woodcraft with her, and she appeared on this documentary. So I messaged her this nice message, and she sent me this really nice message back. And so I would give people advice, to reach out to other people that they might know that have autism, or attend support groups. Documentaries, or maybe even some more books. There could be some kind of newspaper type thing, or just in general, more advertising about the groups that are for people with autism, because I think that's really important, because the kind of groups where people meet up, I know that they're important for people with autism, because without them, I read some quite sad statistics that often many people with autism actually have no social contact whatsoever. And I spoke to actually some people in an all women's group, and some of them spoke about having far worse experiences than me in the past, having no friends or getting picked last in PE, which I found quite upsetting to listen to because of having Asperger's. And so I know that those kind of talking groups would be even more so important for people who are more affected. Having autism is useful so that you can know your strengths and weaknesses and why you might be different, especially socially. It might explain to you why you relate to people differently. Obviously, people with autism, they struggle more to make friendships and have often sometimes their conversations can appear to be one-sided. Well, this is what I read, because they find it more difficult to imagine themselves in someone else's shoes a bit. Certain changes, obviously, for maybe some of the stereotypes for people have about autism could be good, because I think sometimes people can be worried well, I heard about the others say, or they mask having autism. So some changes would be to avoid that prejudice in general, because it's already more difficult for people who have autism. And, you know, people should deserve to be able to be themselves.